Manifestation is not magic, it is mechanics. Most people think that manifestation fails because they don't want something badly enough. That's not the problem. The problem is that desire has very little influence on reality itself. Reality doesn't respond to what you want, reality responds to what you repeatedly embody. That misunderstanding has kept too many people stuck in cycles of hope and effort and disappointment. And so let's clear this up. Manifestation is not magic, it is not mystical, and it's not about convincing the universe to give you what you want. It is mechanical. And once you understand the mechanics, a lot of the confusion disappears. Most modern manifestation teachings focus on desire, visualization, affirmation, emotional intensity. And the assumption is pretty basic. If you want something badly enough, you think it clearly enough, and you feel it strongly enough, reality will eventually comply. But if that were true, intensity would produce consistent results, and it doesn't. Most people experience the opposite. They feel inspired, they visualize, they affirm, they take action for a while, and then nothing stabilizes, nothing happens. Momentum ends and it collapses. Doubt returns. The same patterns repeat. And it's not because they failed at manifestation, it's because they were working with the wrong layer. Reality doesn't respond to spikes of desire, it responds to stable inputs over time. That's how systems work. And whether you call it reality, life, or the system that you're living inside, the rules are the same. Repeated inputs shape probability. Probability compounds into patterns, and patterns become outcomes. Not instantly, not dramatically, but reliably. This is why manifestation feels unpredictable to most people. They keep changing the input. And here's the distinction that matters. Desire is not an input. Identity is. Identity is the internal reference that you live from. It shapes what you notice, what you expect, what you tolerate, what you repeatedly do when no one is watching. And more importantly, it shapes what you repeat under pressure. Reality doesn't respond to what you hope for in moments of clarity. It responds to what you consistently express through identity, emotion, attention, and behavior. That expression doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be coherent. So let's make this practical. Imagine two people want the same outcome: more money, a healthier relationship, a new career. The desires look identical on the surface, but one person lives from the identity that says, I'm someone who never quite gets ahead. And the other person lives from an identity that says, I'm someone who can learn, adapt, and build over time. The identity difference changes everything. It changes perception, it changes emotional regulation, it changes follow through, it changes what actions feel natural or forced. And over time, the system responds. Not because one person is more worthy, not because one person is more spiritual, but because the inputs are different. This is why manifestation feels mystical to people who don't see the structure. They notice when they're in alignment, things seem to flow. And when they're not in alignment, everything feels heavy. So they assume something is invisible that is rewarding or holding them back. And what's actually happening is a lot simpler. When identity, emotion, intention, and action point in the same direction, friction decreases. And when friction decreases, the perception widens. And when the perception widens, options become visible. And when options become visible, decisions improve. And when decisions improve, outcomes tend to improve. That sequence feels like magic, but it is mechanics. And this is also why force doesn't really work. When people try to manifest by forcing positivity, suppressing doubt, or maintaining emotional intensity, they're fighting the system. Force is usually a sign that something underneath is misaligned. You're trying to override identity instead of updating it. You're trying to command outcomes instead of stabilizing direction. Reality doesn't respond well to that, not because it's hostile, but because it is lawful. So here's the simple way to think about it. Reality doesn't ask you, what do you want? It asks, what are you repeating? What patterns are you reinforcing emotionally? What decisions are you making when motivation drops? What identity shows up when reassurance disappears? That is what the system responds to every time. This is why manifestation is a byproduct, not a goal. You don't manifest by asking harder. You manifest by becoming coherent. When identity becomes stable, emotion regulates faster. When emotion regulates faster, actions become cleaner. When actions become cleaner, repetition stabilizes. And when repetition stabilizes, probability compounds. Eventually, outcomes become or start to feel predictable, not because you're controlling reality, but because you're finally participating in it coherently. So there's one last thing that needs to be said clearly. This does not mean that you cause everything that happens to you. It doesn't mean that suffering is your fault. It doesn't mean that trauma, injustice, or loss are manifestations of misalignment. Reality includes constraints and randomness and other people's choices. Alignment doesn't give you immunity. What it gives you is agency, the ability to rebuild direction, the ability to stop leaking energy into contradiction, the ability to work the system instead of fighting it. So if manifestation hasn't worked for you, the answer is not to try harder. It's to stop treating desire as the lever. Desire points, identity drives, repetition compounds, and outcomes follow. Manifestation is not magic, it is mechanics. And once you understand that, the work becomes much calmer, much cleaner, and much more honest.